on changing habits, a topic that is so central to personal and leadership growth. Habits quietly shape how we show up every single day, and when we consciously shift them, we unlock the possibility of real transformation. In this session, we will explore how we can take charge of our habits instead of letting them run on autopilot, discover how to break limiting patterns, build empowering routines, and also create real momentum for meaningful change. It is my privilege to introduce the person who inspired this entire journey, Mr. Anil Sachdev, founder and chairman of Soil Institute of Management, and a leader committed to helping individuals and organizations discover their higher purpose. I'm also delighted to be joined by two wonderful co-hosts for this session. Ms. Akanksha Arora, who brings a unique blend of practitioner, consultant, and researcher. She currently works with the School of Inspired Leadership, serves on the board of Udayan Care, and is also pursuing her doctorate at the Tavistock and Portman in the UK. She researches the lived experience of leaders navigating change. Over the past 2 decades, she has held senior roles in global organizations. At Yum Brands, she served as Director of HR for KFC India. Earlier, as Associate Vice President at Right Management, she partnered with leading organizations like Infosys, Genpact, Anand Automotive to design values framework, deliver leadership development programs, and curated initiatives that shaped talent decisions at scale. These roles gave her her ringside view of how everyday habits, whether in hiring, leadership development, or culture building, how they translate into long-term organizational transformation. It is this deep experience combined with her research that fuels her interest in today's theme, how small conscious shifts in habits can create momentum for leaders and organizations to unlock meaningful growth. Thank you, Akanksha, for being here. We also have with us Mr. Vijay Jamwal. Vijay Kumar Jamwal is an accomplished HR leader with 20 plus years of global experience in HR transformation, talent strategy, and workforce scalability across multiple sectors, including fintech, SaaS, banking, and technology. He has led high-performing teams in India, GCC, APAC, the US, and Europe with deep expertise in hiring and developing critical talent, driving organizational excellence, and enabling digital HR innovation. Vijay's career spans top organizations such as Citigroup, Global Logic, Impetus, and Gartner, and he currently heads HR for Biz2X, a global fintech SaaS firm. Passionate about cultural transformation and continuous learning, Vijay finds inspiration in the mountains as an avid explorer, always pursuing growth both personally and professionally. Thank you both for joining this important conversation. And of course, I'm Dakshita Kapoor, faculty and HR consultant at Soil Institute of Management. Previously, I worked with Reckitt Benckiser in their sales and brand team. In terms of education, I'm a psychology graduate, went on to do my MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. I've always had an interest and inclination towards academics and research, specifically in the OB and leadership development domain. So I'm very grateful to now be able to combine that passion with my work at Soil. And now to set the stage for us, I would like to invite Anil sir to share his opening reflections and also help us anchor our discussion in the deeper purpose of this session. Sir, please.
Thank you very much, and welcome to this time and through this space. This is perhaps the most difficult question that one can ask oneself, that how does one bring about personal transformation through the habits that I need to change? Because habits are formed over time. We pick these habits first up subconsciously, unconsciously by observing others. For example, my dear friend Visti Banaji, who is here. I noticed when I began my career with Tata's, whenever somebody would say thank you to Visti, he would reply by saying thank you. And I think I noticed over time I began to do the same. Because you pick these type of things up from your colleagues, and it's so the people you hang around with, people you enjoy working with, people in your own home that you love. Some of your habits are even without realizing it, you begin to emulate those. But some other habits you come to you as unwelcome visitors. Those are the addictions that we get, whether it is spending too much time on social media or the usual addictions like tobacco, alcohol, drugs, and so on. But there are also other kinds of habits like the habit of anger and throwing a fit. Some people just develop that habit and they enjoy getting attention through that kind of behavior. So some of these are, of course, things which they get hold of you for whatever nature, and we can examine why that happens. And at some point in life, you begin to realize those habits are not serving you well, and you want to find a way to overcome those habits and develop new ones, which are of the kind that you dream about leading a certain life or being the leader that you would like to be, and you wish you could change habits. So sometimes many people are able to do that. Many times it's a work in progress as long as they're alive, which means they make a promise to themselves to change the habit and they find it very frustrating when they're unable to do so, and then they give up just trying and they say, oh, I am like this and people better take me for who I am, right? Good or for bad. So I think it's a fascinating subject, and I would love to explore these ideas with you. So thank you for hosting this session and for the quality of questions I'm sure that are coming my way. So thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, sir, for those inspiring thoughts. Let's build on that together. And I'd love to begin our conversation with our co-panelists. May I now request Vijay to please ask the question. Over to you, Vijay.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible well. So first of all, thank you so much, Anilji, for really sharing this space and able to give an opportunity to co-host you and ask you some questions so that we can learn you. I've noticed that in our life, we know most of the times what we need to change, either habits or personalities or situations around us, right? But it's still difficult and hard to change those habits. So one is, in your experience, wanted to understand why is it difficult to change and what are those real practical steps we all can change, we can take to change some of those habits in our daily lives.
So the reason habits are called habits because they are behaviors which are practiced over long periods of time and they become part of who we are. And the reason it's very difficult to change them is that we do not raise our awareness to a level where we can become observers of our own behavior, because it's very difficult. It's like some people talk about this. I had an out of body experience. That means I could, as if, observe myself as a third person. And some people, when they introspect and they look back at what they did and what impact it had and how their with their continuously ways of behaving in some ways it was having a certain impact on a certain team or a certain situation or a certain context. So it is the awareness that comes. Sometimes awareness is forced, like all of a sudden there's a breakdown of a relationship, and the person whom you have taken for granted says, "My God, how selfish you have become." That I'm sitting next to you, the spouse says, and partner says, wanting to have a conversation, and you are so lost in your own world that you are not even aware that I'm trying to get your attention and to have a conversation with you. And even when I'm talking to you, your mind is elsewhere. And this is not the way it's going to turn out between us. So you all of a sudden get rudely awakened by the feedback because somebody very close to you chooses to give you honest feedback to say, how are you coming across to the person? Because that person deeply cares for you at one level and therefore is talking to you about your dysfunctional behavior. To receive feedback from somebody who cares for you, and then to accept that feedback is the beginning of the new awareness. This won't come to you simply by doing a psychometric test or doing a 360 process like we do in organizations. But it would come to you when in your own eyes something is not working out and you are really not able to reach the kind of state that you are aspiring to reach. It may be your growth as a leader. It may be your inability to get the best out of your team. It may be frustration in relationships, or it may be even your personal health. You know, there are many people who are suffering from health issues, but they are unable to get rid of the habits that have caused those health issues. And when the blood test report for the first time comes, say, oh my God, I'm 40 and I've become a diabetic. Or, you know, what the hell, I'm developing these ache and suddenly I have angina problem at 35. And when people get these rude shocks sometimes on health, then sometimes people get this new awareness. Even then, people don't change for reasons we will talk about in one of our future episodes. But creation of the new awareness, and then you are wanting to really accept that awareness as a gift, that feedback as a gift. Very rarely do we accept feedback that wants us to change our habits in a way that which is a gift, because most often we deny it, most often we ignore it, most often we think this is not fair, and we don't accept, and because we don't take the time to really genuinely introspect and reflect about what's going on, where is this habit coming from, how is it stopping me from becoming the best version of myself. So really the awareness is the starting point, therefore accepting the commitment to change. I want to talk about 3 dimensions here. See, the body does something. The heart or emotional mind wants something. And the intellectual mind says, I need this. This, I need to do something versus I want to do something versus I actually do it. When these 3, the body, the mind, the intellect, come together to repeatedly practice a behavior that the intellect says, this is what I need. The emotional mind says, yes, I want this. And then the body responds by saying, I will actually take the action to do it. When all 3 get aligned together, that is when a habit is formed. So if there is a habit that I want to get rid of, I have to challenge myself. Either I get the awareness at the intellectual level, or I get the awareness at the emotional level, or even at the body level, I can feel it. So it doesn't matter where it comes from, but I have to own it at all the 3 levels. Because if there is a gap between what the body does, the intellect needs, and the mind wants, if there is a gap, the new habit will not get formed, the change will not take place. So these are just some opening comments on this subject that I wanted to make. Yes.
Thank you so much. I think that's such deep and really great to. Thank you so much. Yeah, please
Thank
carry on.
you. Dakshita, you may unmute yourself.
Thank you for sharing that, sir. Now I would request Akanksha to take over and ask her question of interest.
Yeah, Anil, that was a beautiful response, and I think it's triggering a lot of reflection for me. But my question for you is coming from my 23 years of knowing you, and my first association with you is of being a purpose-driven leader. So my question is going to come from there. Um, in your experiences, how have you seen leaders align their daily habits with their larger purpose, especially in moments of uncertainty, especially in moments of pressure?
Yeah. So let me give you an example. For example, of my dear friend Gopal Vettal, the CEO of Airtel, with whom I have worked closely. Gopal faced perhaps the most unprecedented challenge a CEO can face, that government regulatory frameworks were going through change. A huge competitor had entered the field in Geo, which had an unlimited budget. And the customer was demanding a lot of features like no call drops and extra facilities, no billing problem. And the customers could be pretty demanding, and they would easily do migration of their number if their experience was not positive. So huge amount of change needed to be done in Airtel. And Gopal came from a background, fortunately, where leaders had taught him in a scientific way to look at what the consumer needs and wants, But I think he could have easily got stressed by the huge challenge, because when you are faced with a competitor like Jio, which has an unlimited budget to compete with you, it can easily disillusion you, and it can easily put you under tremendous pressure. So I think two things worked in Gopal's favor, and I think I saw him doing that. He said, one thing I have learned is we have to bring about clarity and simplicity in the way we think. Let's not get muddled up. Let's not think about too many things. Let's keep the heart of our business as transforming the consumer experience. Let's remove all the usual things that happen in an organization when people begin to give reasons for things not working out. So he encouraged a culture of candor, no BS, if you know what I mean, and encouraged people to give honest feedback. And he himself was absolutely authentic. Sometimes it could be disconcerting for somebody to hear it like a colleague, and never throwing his rank around, but as a fellow colleague to say, oh, tell me what's wrong. Tell me what's the issue here and how we are working together. And I think he had to also learn, and I think he's very fortunate, as during the interview I had with him, which is available on YouTube, he also thanked his wife, Irina, who was a McKinsey director and a very skillful advisor and coach, who was also a classmate from IIM Kolkata. He had a sounding board where he could get more honest feedback about how sometimes he could get lost in the world of ideas without paying attention to some of the dimensions in the people issues. So I think he had to then go back to his roots, where he was a student of the Rishi Valley School, where in J. Krishnamurti's Power of, I don't know if some of you have read the book, it's called On Education, written by J. Krishnamurti, a great philosopher. In Rishi Valley School, they teach their students how to listen and how to observe. For hours together, they are asked to spend time with nature, simply to observe and listen. And this ability to observe the whole system is a very, very, very subtle gift of being a leader. And Gopal, the reason he was able to comprehend the complexity and understand the whole system is that he leveraged his holistic education from the Rishi Valley, the honest feedback from his spouse, who was also his best friend. And he was able to bring about a degree of candor where people will speak the truth. And so I think he learned to transform himself from being a very skillful marketing person to a very successful CEO who could take stakeholders. And he also had honest conversations with his board and with his promoter, Sunil Bharti Mittal, who incidentally created the space for him to succeed. So I think I found that was a master class on how somebody would adapt your leadership and behaviors to what was needed in the context and change one's way of working to embrace the whole and to bring about the transformation. So I think that is one specific case that I would like to talk about.
Wonderful. Thank you, Anil. Some very useful nuggets in this. And I think what stands out for me is the everyday actions, which maybe started when he was still in school, uh, and subtly, and how they all added up over a period of time. So yeah, thank you, Anil. Thank you for that.
Sure.
So, taking cue from what you said and also the questions by my co-panelists, I have one question out of curiosity. Changing old patterns can sometimes even feel uncomfortable. So, how do we deal with that discomfort that comes with it, and how can people stay connected to their deeper purpose during that transition so that they don't give up too soon? So, how do we deal with that discomfort that comes with changing our habits?
Dakshita, that's a very good question, especially when it comes to some personal habits. I will give a personal example, then I'll talk about a CEO I was coaching.
Sure, sir.
The personal example was when I was addicted to tobacco, like many of my colleagues. Visti Banerjee is here. He will remember we were all very fond of our smoking. And even in Aisha, where I joined, my CEO, the founder, Vikram Lal, and my other colleagues, we all used to buy three packets of cigarettes in the morning. And, used to be chain smokers. And it was like you couldn't think without smoking, you know. And every time I tried giving up smoking, giving up smoking had become a habit with me. Giving up it. So it's very, very interesting that giving up smoking has become a habit. And when that used to happen, I used to then have some different sort of needs to eat something else. Then I would put on some weight because I am giving up smoking. And Neera told me, Anil, go back to smoking because this behavior of yours of being irritable and eating and putting on weight and getting irritated when you're not smoking is an issue here. And then, I was in IIM Ahmedabad giving a talk, and I got a call that my father has had a stroke. And I rushed back to Pune, Jahangir Nursing Home, where my dad was admitted. He couldn't recognize me, he couldn't recognize my other siblings because his face had turned. And doctors said he has only a few hours to live. Please inform everybody. Before entering his room, I made a deal with God, and I said, God, spare his life for one more year because he's my best friend and best friend to all his children. Please spare his life at least for one more year. Give us that 1 year to be with him. And I said, God, the thing that I love the most, which I find it difficult to give up, is cigarettes. So I was smoking those Will's Navy Cut cigarettes. And I extinguished my last cigarette in Jahangir Nursing Home, and I entered the room and said, God, I will never smoke again. And then inside, something happened as a result of that. And we thought about an idea. Let's call my father's teacher, Swami Chinmayananda, on the phone and put the phone next to my father's ears. And we did that. And one of the earlier times I narrated this, all of a sudden, my father got conscious and said, Gurudev. And his face turned back to normal. And Dr. Wadia in the Jahangir Nursing Home, the neurosurgeon, said, I have never seen such a miracle in my life. But because we saw that happening in our presence, and I said, God, you have listened to my prayer. And there was no question of ever smoking again. So, which means something happened in me, that something of a much higher level order, like my father's life. And I said, what good is this habit that is doing that? And my dad himself had been a smoker in his younger days, and he had given it up the day he met Swami Chinmayananda. But having been with him for so many years as a disciple along with him of Swami Chinmayananda, that didn't stop us, the brothers, from still picking up smoking and becoming like our dad used to be a smoker at one time. So this is an incident. So this tells me that this pain, of course, there was a lot of pain earlier when I used to give up smoking, and therefore I was unable to give it up. But the moment this other pain that was going to impact my life, and said, for the sake of not experiencing this pain, I am willing to take a lesser pain. So all of a sudden, it was clear what was more important in life. And I think very often it happens that when you recognize that there is something much higher order that has entered in your life, that the habits of the old are now trivial. They don't serve my purpose because all of a sudden I am now committed to a new way. And those earlier habits are now so trivial that I don't have that much pain in walking away from those. So that's what I will share as a personal thing. But now about the person I was coaching. This person was an extremely successful leader, but his difficulty was that he was not treating his people well and empowering them and getting the best out of them. And he had a foul temper, and he would be aggressive. And he was otherwise a very successful person in business results. So his sponsor, the chairman of the company, said to me, now he's reached a high enough level. If he doesn't change his behavior now, no good how he is, no matter how good he is in getting us business, he won't go far. In fact, we may even have to let go of him unless he changes this. So I began to work with him. And he also understood that it was high time that he took the feedback seriously. But something very interesting happened in my first few months of coaching with him. He made a promise to himself that he was not going to lose his shirt. He's going to have a good conversation with his team. And he kept sending me messages saying everything is worked out well. For the last 3 weeks, I have not had a single such episode. But after 3 weeks, he sent me a message, Anil, they made me do it again. They made me do it again, meaning it's the team who was giving excuses for not meeting their goals. And when we came back and we positioned it in the way he was positioning it, that the team made me do it, and I said, let's go deeper into it, he soon understood that he was using a language which was imprisoning his own mind and giving him an excuse not to change. And he began to recognize that what his own mind was speaking to him as a reason not to change. And he began to observe his own thought patterns and his ways of rationalizing that behavior. And when he became aware of that, then he began to find new ways because he understood, again through some personal reflection, help from his spouse, family feedback. He understood how, because some of these behaviors were also being demonstrated at home. And when he began to recognize as to how important it was for him to change, and then he began to make serious efforts to learn the new behaviors. And the good news is emotional intelligence can be developed provided you are really committed to making that change happen. So he began to practice the new behaviors. And initially, people were a bit skeptical, thinking this is not the real person that we are talking about. By bit, they began to notice this was to stay. And then, of course, there was a new phase that began in his personal life and professional life. And of course, change began to happen. So these are two personal stories I thought I will share with you.
Thank you, sir. That's such a powerful way of looking at it. I love how you've actually articulated such a beautiful idea in a way that it's easy for everyone to connect with. We also have a question. I think we can take one question from Mr. Anil Grover. Would you like to put on your video and ask your question directly to Anil, sir?
Sure. So video is on.
So Tillai, put the spotlight. Let's have the spotlight on Anil. Add spotlight. There you are.
All right. So I think you have actually in one form answered it. My question actually was, which habits do you still struggle with? You have answered the question which you struggled with in the past and overcame in the tobacco example, for instance, that you find difficult to change.
Sure. One thing my wife tells me, you are addicted to watching India play cricket. And much to her annoyance, at times when she would like me to do other things with the family, that even we are on a family outing, and I have put my phone on silent, but one eye is on the screen to watch India perform. So I must confess that my fondness of the Indian cricket team and watching it play and just watching cricket is something which can be deeply annoying to some of my family members. And I do find it difficult to change, but somehow I love the game. Maybe in one of my future lives, I will actually become a cricketer. I was never very good at it. I never represented any significant team in it, but maybe that was a secret desire. I mean, as a very young child, I was pretty good in playing cricket. Then when I came to Dehu Road in Pune, I had suddenly put on some height and I went for a school trial. My classmate from school is there. I don't know if he remembers this incident. And in the trial, I couldn't land the ball at the right spot because I had put on the height. And then I got discouraged and I became a bit shy of trying. Of course, later on, I found some courage to play it. And even in Aisha, we used to play some tennis ball cricket and all that. And we became fond of it. But that particular moment, I think, when I understand there is some part, maybe the past life, something in this prarabdha or whatever, just a love for the game. I watch India play. I go to watch World Cup in England, Australia, everywhere. So there is some fascination for this game, and which I must say has been developed from an early childhood because my parents, my family, my uncles listening to radio commentary from Radio Australia at 4 4 a.m. and the whole family having chai and, sitting down in a joint family and listening to cricket. So I think these are just some happy moments, and cricket gives me a lot of happiness. So yeah, and Ravi Malhotra is telling our school field was not good for cricket. Okay, Ravi, that's only an excuse. But anyway, I think so. This is the habit that my wife would say. At a personal level, although I'm pretty disciplined about eating, but and all that, but I do have this thing about especially my love for golgappas and chaat and so on. It's not necessarily very healthy. So sometimes my wife will say this is not the right weather. So every time I go for a haircut, there's a wonderful. I have hardly any hair, but whatever I go for, there's a wonderful golgappa shop. So there are those temptations of enjoying that kind of food, which sometimes I give into. So these are some of the things that I struggle with. But cricket would be the more from a family point of view. But I personally don't yet have the need to change too much of it, as long as it doesn't take me away from my main work. So I try to negotiate with my clients also on the day of crucial India matches. No client commitment, no board meeting, no crucial things. So that's how it is.
What a lovely anecdote. Yeah, for you it's a delight. For Neera, whatever it is.
Yeah, it is. She gets super annoyed at times. And my daughter too, because my son and I am fond of cricket, but my daughter Mehak, who works for McKinsey, she's like, come on, Daddy, Papa, what the hell are you doing? This is an important family occasion. Don't look at your phone right now. Okay. So yeah, so I must admit that is one thing that I have to find a way to reduce that addiction to cricket. Yes.
Thank you for sharing, Anil.
Thank you.
We also have a question by Mr. Madan Gopal Agarwal. Can you please unmute yourself?
MG Agarwal. Let me see where MG is. Yeah. MG Agarwal, where are you?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. There you are. And I'm putting the spotlight on you. Yeah, go ahead.
Anil, you talked about three things:
Yes.
body, heart, and brain.
Yes.
Now, some 35 years ago, when in one of the discussion when you and I were talking, then we had a sequencing, like main faculty is thinking. Normally, whatever I think, I articulate, I speak. And whatever I speak repeatedly, I do. And whatever I do, initially, that is how it shows up in my behavior. And when I'm addicted to it, it becomes my habit. And that actually dictates my destiny. So how would you respond to that?
Yeah, you very much. In fact, this is said in the Upanishads also, that whatever you thought and whatever you start beginning to think, your words, then they get translated into action. So the Upanishads talk about that, and that becomes your character, and that becomes your destiny. So that's your karma. So it becomes part of your prarabdha. There's an important part of this, which is to say that the underlying statement is between your words and action. There is something which we say, sometimes there is a knowing doing gap.
Yeah.
Professor at Stanford, Pfeiffer, has done a lot of work in that famous book, Knowing Doing Gap. Because even though sometimes the intellect knows this is the right thing for me to do, and you called it brain, we use the word called the intellect or buddhi, which is a higher level thinking than just the mana, which is the emotional side. Sometimes I know that this is needed, but I'm actually not fully committed to it. I don't want it enough. Okay. So that's why there is a gap between what I speak and what I actually do. If the speaking, what I say is important to me, is followed by action, all fine. Mm-hmm. Because my emotions have got aligned with my need to change. But the real problem begins when actually I need something, but I want to do something else. Let me give an example. Many times we are doing something which is not the right thing to do. What in hindsight we call is a sin. Okay. Whether it's an act of speaking a lie, or it's corruption, or anything else that you would call an improper behavior. But you know, the mind is like a monkey. When it knows, especially if it thinks that it can trick the situation because nobody is watching. So people say the people have three lives. The life that they display, the life that they have inside, and then there is also the deepest part which they call the secret life. So, I mean, in another form, you can say the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious.
Or the Johari window.
Yeah. Or so the psychologists explain it in that way. In our Indian spiritual thought, we talk about how some of these things get formed over time. So when you look at the fact that it's the mind, it's the monkey mind, that's why I use the metaphor of the monkey mind, which is not stable, which will give you an excuse even at 70, although he smokes 20 cigarettes a day. So I'll keep playing that monkey. So this monkey mind's behavior that does not allow the intellect to prevail. So our spiritual teacher used to say, what's the difference between a human being and a four-legged animal? In a four-legged animal, what lies below the belly and the heart and the head are all at the same level. That means a four-legged animal does not have the power to discriminate and is not able to use that intelligence to distinguish between the base sensual needs from what is the most important aspect for the person. So he said the fact that we are two-legged animals standing straight because we have an order. This is the one. There are also the chakra theories and so on. This is the power of discernment. Then the power of the emotion, which then the switch of the action. And that is descending order. Not forget that this UPF is been that capacity to discern, to make the right choices. But if we get muddled up and allow emotions to override what is right, what is wrong, simply because we are fascinated with some attraction, some desire, which may not be a proper desire. Desire to do good is a virtuous desire. But the desire which takes us away from the kind of notion of the person we want to be is the difficult part. So how do you then invoke that higher part of yourself to say, I can now look at the other things that I'm doing. I'm aware every time I indulge in this behavior, later on I feel miserable. Because that's why our teacher said, sin is not in action, it is in reaction. And reaction from whom? Your own inner witness. So every time the diabetes patient is cheating from everybody by eating sugar, or every time that person is having a binge when the person is supposed to watch out for the weight the person has put on because of the pressure on the health and the ECG, so that person is actually later on miserable for it. So how do you then invoke the higher? And Swami Chinmayananda guided us to say, look here, you can choose whichever path. For example, sometimes you need to be convinced of the need of change. So you want to meet with people whom you think are highly evolved intellectually. So let's say CEO is wanting to change the way the person is leading, but is currently not convinced that the person should be putting people first. The person is obsessed with the idea of the more top-driven hierarchical model of leadership which the person believes works. But when he meets some evolved, what the person considers CEOs who are peers whom he can look up to, and there the conversation turns to why the need to empower people and why you should not be telling them what to do. All of a sudden, the person begins to question that. That means out of intellectual peers whom the person respects, sometimes intellectually you feel now there is a need to change. Sometimes at the emotional level, you meet like-minded people, you have peers, you have friends, and you engage in a virtuous, you go to a virtuous group. Especially I've seen people changing a lot when they take up a practice of volunteering. Some of them, when they get associated with the seva, any form of seva, any form of service to society, there are subtle shifts that begin to take place in them because now emotionally they are getting aligned. Somewhere they are enjoying the power of what is called the bhakti marg or the devotion, because there is some powerful emotional reason when you come together. That emotional experience you have of enjoying the experience with like-minded people says, for example, that's why when people are beginning a new fitness regime, they say, become part of a support group, like people who go for cycling together, running together, becoming buddies in the exercise program, because that gives each other encouragement, and that emotional encouragement then helps in bringing about the need to change. And of course, sometimes for some people, unless they engage in the action of actually doing it, which means simply, even though they have not accepted the need fully, even though emotionally it's still work in progress, they actually put it on their calendar. Okay, let me start this practice. Even though I am not fully convinced, let me start the practice. And sometimes repeated action which begins to show them the way. So it could be gyan, it could be bhakti, it could be karma, which we discussed also on the spiritual path, but the same thing is applied to habits. So first I listen to it through Shravana intellectually, then I reflect and make it my own, which is the emotional. I accept the need for change. And then actually the Nidhi Dhyasana, the practice that we talk about, in actually repeatedly doing that practice so that it becomes a part of the new DNA. Because remember, any habit to change, the current habit is producing also, as of course the Westerners always research about the chemicals being released in the brain and how the brain gets addicted to that chemical being released in the brain, which is making you do again and again the things that you should not be doing. For a person who enjoys the raw power of people over shouting at them and putting fear, there is a momentary high that happens to that person and some chemical is released. See, I can put people to task. But that momentary high, because that chemical is coming each time that behavior is being repeated. But when you suddenly realize that the brain is tricking you, that actually this is not real, what is giving you high is actually your low. Then when that begins to happen, then the chemicals don't get secreted every time you do the negative behavior. Then gradually the endocrinal system, the hormonal system, the metabolism of the body, it also begins to adjust to new ways which are more purer, which are closer to the kind of leader you wish to become. And then you don't need that external stimulation to get that high and that adrenaline flowing. And then there is a more calm way and a assured way of adopting the new way. So all those things begin to happen. So people do, as you can see, all these books that have come out, Atomic Habits, and this and that, there is enough the Western world has written on habit change. So I'm sure people here are very familiar with that. I don't want to go into that, because people study a lot about the neurological way of brain. But I think I would like to take more of a spiritual dimension to say, invoke the witness in you to observe what your equipment are doing. And when you invoke the witness in you, then you realize how you have fallen into the trap. And then you can break free from the habit change. So that's what I would like to see. But I'm sure there are many other people who would like to contribute to this discussion. So go ahead.
Thanks, Anil. Very informative.
Thank you. Thank you. Who wants to go next?
So I have a question by Dr. Prince.
Yes, Prince Bob. Okay, where is Prince now? Yeah, Prince, shall we put the spotlight on you? Yeah, Prince, go ahead and ask the question. Prince, are you there? Prince Augustine?
Yes, Anil, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, so you have answered it partly to a large extent from the various things, because if you look at what you did in Rise, the urgency and need for change. So we did a lot of work to actually what is the need and what is the urgency, right? So till that time, we could not really invoke and create a larger involvement, or you'll take Ashoka, right? The whole battle, right, actually changed and created a deep emotional impact on him, and hence the need. Or you take Lord Buddha, he left his whole family for a larger cause, and that becomes the journey of personal transformation. So how does one identify the moment when one has to take the journey of personal transformation? And if that is done, how do you really create a larger purpose, an urgency and need for change, and then prepare for change? I'm sorry, I've asked three questions in one, right? So that I don't repeat it to you. No?
No, and it's actually building upon the last episode that you were part of, which you were asking some wonderful questions, and you have some very deep insights on transformation thanks to the Mahindra Rise story. So basically, you know, this happens to different phases in an individual life, that you have to move on from a certain stage in life. If you continue to be excited by what as a youth you were excited by, even when you have become mature, if you get the same highs which you had as a young person as you have become older, then suddenly you realize that you are not accepting things gracefully. So you are not growing, you are not having transitions in life that you ought to be having.
Okay.
So similarly, in an organization life, there are transitions. Some things are not working and you are holding on to those notions and to ideas. So organizations also develop habits. Leadership teams develop habits that things are actually not working, but they are not aware of things that are not working, and they need to reinvent themselves, need to abandon the old ways and adopt the new ways. Because, leadership teams also get into the habits of thinking in one particular way. And,
Okay.
and this is because they keep supporting them. So to be aware that something is not working and it's time for me to change is that moment of reckoning that happens to people. And if you are really fortunate, it happens to you at the right time and you know that this is the time for you to make the change. Otherwise, there is a period that people get into because there's a need to change, they're not changing, then they're not able to deal, they become helpless, then they go into lows, some of them get into depression because they are not able to take care of themselves at that time when there is a need for change. So the wonderful gift you could have, and I would encourage each person to develop this. If you can, of course, have a spiritual teacher and a teacher whom you can learn from, that is the biggest gift in life. Well, we are not all fortunate that a teacher finds us like that time. Then have a good mentor in life. Having a good mentor to him, to with whom one can be completely transparent and open and really share what is going on, and that person can give you authentic feedback. And if you don't have the gift of a really good mentor, then sometimes having really authentic good friends who will actually tell you and give you authentic feedback so that you can do that. So I think we have earlier also in one of the episodes talked about it, but to consciously develop this kind of network of people who care for you and who are with whom you can hold honest conversations. And secondly, learning to spend quiet time with yourself, which again we have discussed in one of the earlier episodes, that consciously taking the time to reflect, to look back at the past, to introspect, and to continuously observing what is the need for you to. There is some inner call. So, as we say, listening to the knock from within.
Yeah.
There is a knock. There is a knock from within which is coming up, but you are ignoring that knock. When you truly learn to listen to that inner voice, I think the knock from within, I think transformation does happen to people. But they keep suppressing that inner voice. They keep sort of, going into different directions. They keep putting their time full of other kinds of action because they don't want to reflect. A lot of people want to fill up their time with all kinds of tasks, because if they are asked to be quiet and silent and just learn to spend time with themselves, they find it very uncomfortable. So it's not easy. Even in meetings, etc., Prince, when we do workshops, offsites for leadership teams, CEO, as long as it was some activity they were enjoying and dialoguing, everything works well. The moment we get them to honestly introspect on what do they need to take responsibility for to change, that's the tough part. Now suddenly people start feeling exhausted. Oh my God, we haven't really thought about it and we are not used to thinking.
Yes,
Thinking is not easy. And to admit that we are not, that things are not working is not easy. So all kinds of game playing then begins to happen between our minds. The mind is a monkey. So it will give you all kinds of reasons for not the need for change. And collectively, the leadership team is playing a game. They're not admitting the truth to themselves. And they're not finding the root cause of the problem, which is most of the people sitting in the leadership team are responsible. So they are,
Yes.
and the favorite thing is then to start blaming external context or competition or government policy, and if nothing else, the juniors. We don't have the right quality of talent and so on. Or young people are not behaving properly, they are not engaged. So, externalizing the issue. So I think it's very important to take the time to have that, what we call in Sanskrit, Sthita Prajna. We discussed about it earlier. The state of calmness, to be able to observe and listen to the inner voice. Yeah.
Thank you, Anil. You have put
Thank
it
you.
very, very nicely.
Thank you. Okay. What are your next questions? And who is wanting to ask the next question?
Mr. Ashok Kanan has raised his hand.
Go ahead. Who is the next person?
Good evening, Mr. Anil. I have put in chat also how to transform our habit of work-life imbalance, more of work or a lot of work and very little personal life. So that transformation, how it will happen? Your suggestion or guidance on the same.
Yeah, Ashok, this is one of the senior leaders I was coaching used to keep telling me, I want to bring about this change. And I then told him, I said, show me your calendar for the next 3 months. He showed me the calendar. I said, why are you putting all these meetings on your weekends? He said, there is a sense of urgency. I said, okay, so how many days are you traveling out of station? I have to travel for this reason. How often are you returning home at the right time? Why have you kept this meeting late in the evenings in the office or virtual meeting late into the night? So every time it was that there was something in the work that was more important. I said, then you are saying you want to improve your work-life balance, but actually your calendar shows the opposite. So is it really a problem? No, my family is complaining that I'm not spending enough time with them. Okay. Are they complaining because you don't spend enough time at home, or even if that's the time that you are there, you are not with them? That means you are so preoccupied that you are not spending even the quality time that you could spend with your people and doing things which they would like to do with you. You are unable to do it. So where is this coming from? So then when we started going deep, the person said, it's very important for me to gain this recognition. I've been striving hard to get to the new role. I want to be the CEO at the global company. I'm the India head right now. And I'm trying to strive for a role to get the global role. And that to me is most important because I had made a commitment to myself that by the time I reach this age, I should advance to this level. I said, what does that level mean to you? And what's the price you are willing to pay for it? And the person began to introspect and began to get some honest feedback and began to talk to his family members and his friends. Then he realized that I think I have become too obsessed with some earlier notion that I had of whatever goal I was trying to achieve. And I realized that this is not something, because the goal was for something else. Because when we went deeper, why is the new role so important to you? Why is this additional role? Ultimately, because he needed more recognition, needed to be appreciated more. I said, if that is the feel you are needing, what are your good qualities that you really love about yourself? He said, what do you mean? I've never thought about what I love about myself. I said, no, there must be something you love about yourself. And when the person began to think about that, this is what I love. I said, okay, this is the gift given to you that you love about yourself. What can you do to serve others with this quality? All of a sudden, he began to think of new ways. He began to find ways of using his talent to help others. And when that began to happen, he started getting a lot of recognition and appreciation. Even at home, when he began to do that with his children and with his family, when he wanted to do more things for them rather than for himself, beautiful changes began to happen. And he said to me a few months later, he said, Anil, I have realized it was not a work-life balance, but I was trying to fill my calendar with too much of this kind of activity because somewhere I was striving for need to be heard, appreciated, and acknowledged. I was missing that in what I was doing. Therefore, I was filling up my calendar with other things, thinking that will earn me. So now I've realized that that's not the way I should be doing. I should really be putting the focus on others. And then even at work, I'm becoming far more now appreciated and I feel far more fulfilled. And the family is no longer complaining to me because they've started some new behavior they've seen of me at home. And frankly, I'm beginning to enjoy that more and more. So I'm also beginning to spend more time with the people I love. And things are beginning to change. So that's how the conversation ended. So it began with a work-life problem, but there were some other reasons behind that that we jointly explored. So sometimes work-life problem is full of something else. Of course, there are periods in life when that is a genuine problem and there's a company in crisis, your organization is going through some serious difficulties and all hands on board are working excessively. That can happen for a short while in an organization. And that is understandable. Even families understand that. But if that is a culture all the time, that you are excessively working, all of you, because then there is a serious problem. That means either you are under-resourcing yourself because you think you can't afford it. And then with people, you are putting them under pressure to get more done out of the same people, in which case, you know that there is going to be a burnout. So obviously that's not sustainable in the long term. So somebody has to speak the truth. And then I think one has to take responsibility. So that's what I would say. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
We also have one question from Mr. Manikandan.
Yeah, go ahead, Manikandan.
Sir, thank you for the enlightening session. I have one question, sir. Sometimes even I encounter a situation, my heart says one thing, mind says one thing, and body says another thing. So I get into some kind of confusion where to listen.
Very, very good. Very good question. I think these are conflicting situations, particularly when it comes to wanting to serve different stakeholders all at once. So, for example, I want to do well for my wife or my daughter or my son, and I also want to do well for my supervisor at work. I also want to do something for someone else, and I find it very difficult to say no. So I keep on saying yes when actually I don't mean yes. When this kind of behavior takes over and you are trying to please too many people at the same time, and you're trying to become the best to everybody, all of a sudden you are trying to please others. So your need to please others comes in the way of your authentic self. And that's why you get into this difficulty of confused signals from body, mind, and intellect. When you watch yourself carefully and say, what is the most authentic thing to do? I remember when I was inviting Akansha to work with us, and she said to me, Anil, I do 1 week in a month for Udayan Care, which I do pro bono. I act as their head of HR. And I will not give up that because that gives me the inner satisfaction and joy, and that's a worthwhile cause. So I will not be able to take that time. The other 1 week, I'm doing my PhD from Tavistock, and I will not compromise on that. So if you still need me and I'm a primary caregiver to my family, to my father, and I can't take away time from that. So if you still want me to work with you, then only a week every month is what I'll be able to give you. And I think she said it so nicely. I said, Akansha, that's fine. A week is enough. We will work around. Whatever you can do in a week with us, we will manage. But I'm glad she put up priorities and she said it very nicely, but very firmly. And then at some point when she said, Anil, now I have to prioritize my PhD first. I have to conclude this. So even that week has to be for some time kept on hold. I said, okay, Akansha, you do what works for you and that's fine. I think we need to be honest with ourselves first and need to be authentic in our conversation. When we learn to do that, this dilemma of feeling differently inside ourselves will disappear, because most of this confusion is caused because we try to do too many things, try to please too many people at the same time, and then we get into this conflict. I think it's time. Thank you very much. It's time to close now, Dakshita. So over to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Akanksha and Vijay, and thank you to everyone here for participating with such openness and curiosity. Today's conversation reminded us that change doesn't require dramatic leaps, it starts with small intentional shifts. To close this powerful session, I would now like to invite Anil sir, if you would like to share something and leave us with some thoughts to carry forward.
No, I'll just say that habits, when we recognize, are only habits of the mind or the body or the way of thinking and the intellect. Then as we invoke the higher in ourselves, the ability to observe these equipment, then we can make changes in this equipment. We can make changes consciously. And when we deeply love the idea of transformation, because it is for the higher good. So the question I always ask is, what is the highest common purpose that we can serve? And that is why we have this habit. So if you have that highest common good in mind and genuine intention to serve that, and then if you recognize how your equipment are coming in the way, you will find a way to change the habits for the sake of the larger good that inspires you. Then change will occur. That's what I would say. Okay.
Thank you, sir, for those
Thank you very much.
words.
Thank you so much, Anil. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Anil. Thank you,
Thank you.
Dakshita.
Thank you very much. Thank you.